Imagine being pushed to the absolute edge of poverty, where you are forced to compromise your deepest, most fundamental morals just to feed your starving family.
Right. It is a terrifying thought.
And then imagine watching someone else, or in this case, the divine, get all the credit for your survival.
It's a devastating premise for a story.
It really is. Welcome to another deep dive. If you love exploring the dark, gritty, and profoundly human corners of classic literature like we are about to do today, please take a moment to subscribe to the Simplified Summary YouTube channel.
Yes, please do.
Humbly, we ask you to hit the like button on this video and share your valuable thoughts in the comments. Your support is exactly what allows us to keep bringing these incredible stories to light.
And today's story is one that practically engineers a breakdown of the human psyche.
Absolutely.
I mean, we are looking at a scenario where sheer survival and morality are just fundamentally at odds with one another. It creates this pressure cooker that eventually has to explode.
So today's mission is a comprehensive exploration of a truly powerful short story by the legendary Munshi Premchand. It's a piece found in the famous Mansarovar collection.
Specifically part 2 of that collection, yeah.
Exactly. And the title is Basi Bhat me Khuda ka Sajha.
Which roughly translates to God's share in stale rice.
Yes. And this story is an absolute masterclass in clashing desperate, unforgiving reality against unwavering traditional faith. So let us set the stage here and look at the agonizing starting point of this narrative.
We need to understand just how bad things are.
We are introduced to a man named Dinanath and his wife, Gauri, and they are trapped in an absolute nightmare. Dinanath has been unemployed for a full year.
A full year, just waking up every single morning knowing there's no income coming in,
None.
no safety net, and really no immediate hope. Premchand doesn't just treat poverty as an economic state here. He portrays it as a chronic psychological disease that infects every single aspect of a person's life.
And the specific details provided in the narrative make that disease feel incredibly suffocating. Dinanath and Gauri have systematically pawned off the few pieces of jewelry they own.
Right. The traditional fallback plan.
Gone. The rent on their house is piling up month after month. And perhaps the most heartbreaking detail in the text is that their one-year-old baby is crying for milk.
Yeah.
And they literally do not know where their next meal is coming from.
When you connect those details to the broader picture of human psychology, you realize that this level of chronic stress fundamentally alters how you view the world.
You are operating purely in the primal brain.
Exactly. You are in sheer survival mode.
Yeah.
Every single interaction outside your home becomes fraught with danger, judgment, and just overwhelming shame.
And that shame is a massive, massive component of Dinanath's daily existence. He is absolutely terrified to even step out of his own front door.
He's basically a prisoner.
A prisoner in his own home because of his mocking creditors. The text gives this brutally vivid example of a creditor shouting at him in public.
Right.
The guy says something along the lines of, "Wow, Babuji, you promised to pay in 2 days and haven't shown your face in 2 months."
And for anyone who might be unfamiliar with the cultural context here, that term babuji is traditionally a mark of respect.
Right.
It is often used for a clerk, an educated man, or a gentleman. But in the mouth of this creditor,
It's weaponized.
completely weaponized into a profound insult. It is a sarcastic jab at Dinanath's complete loss of social standing.
That public humiliation strips away whatever dignity he has left, which is often the last thing a person is holding on to before they completely break.
Yeah, his back is entirely against the wall.
But then, walking around with that physical weight of humiliation on his chest, seemingly out of nowhere, Dinanath comes home with incredible news.
A lifeline.
He has finally landed an office job, and it pays 50 rupees a month.
Now, in the context of a family that is currently starving, 50 rupees a month is not just a salary.
Yeah.
It is an absolute fortune. It represents immediate salvation for them. And this brings us to Gauri's reaction.
Which is so crucial.
It serves as the foundation for the central conflict of the entire narrative. Because when she hears about this new job, she simply blossoms with joy.
But she doesn't credit Dinanath, does she?
No. For her, this is not an economic lucky break. It is not the result of her husband's persistent job hunting. Her faith in God becomes completely unshakable in this moment.
She views this as pure, undeniable divine intervention. She believes this job is an act of divine mercy that has miraculously ended their crisis.
And it is a deeply human reaction. When we are at our lowest point, when we are completely powerless to change our circumstances, any stroke of luck feels like a miracle handed down directly from above.
It feels like magic.
But Gary's reaction establishes a very specific, highly transactional view of faith. Her worldview essentially boils right down to this: we suffered, God witnessed our suffering, and now God has fixed it.
She believes they have been rewarded for enduring.
Exactly. But this pristine, transactional view of faith is about to be severely tested, because the grim reality of how that money is actually being acquired is totally different.
Yeah, that 50 rupee job is not the blessing it appears to be. Dinanath's new reality is anything but a fairy tale. Very quickly into his new employment, his boss, a man referred to as Sethji, forces him to cross the line.
And Sethji is another really important term here. It denotes a wealthy merchant, a man who holds all the economic power and all the social capital in this dynamic.
And Sethji recognizes Dinanath's desperation right away.
And he immediately exploits it.
He orders Dinanath to commit forgery. Sethji forces him to replace and rewrite a very specific ledger page.
A delicate job.
And Dinanath has to do it perfectly, mimicking the handwriting and the layout so exactly that absolutely no one investigating the books can tell the difference.
So I want you to put yourself in Dinanath's chair for a second. Your boss, this wealthy merchant, is standing right over you. If you walk out of that office in protest, your baby starves tonight.
It's a terrible choice.
If you pick up the pen and copy the ledger, you become a criminal. What do you do?
It highlights perfectly how power dynamics operate in the context of extreme poverty. Dinanath is not a hardened criminal looking to cheat the system.
Not at all.
He is a desperate father backed into a corner. He tries to resist, but Sethji's arguments completely overpower him. Sethji uses Dinanath's own poverty as leverage against his morality.
And Dinanath is ultimately defeated by his own empty stomach. He copies the page. Premchand captures the profound tragedy of this moment in one brilliant line. He writes, "A thief was born in Dinanath's heart."
That imagery is chilling. A thief was born in his heart.
The physical act of forging the document is almost secondary here. The birth of that thief in the heart represents the total loss of his moral innocence. Extreme poverty didn't just take his wealth, it has now reached inside and taken his integrity.
And he has to carry the weight of that stolen integrity entirely alone. He goes home and he hides this dark, dirty secret from Gauri.
Because he has to.
He knows that her pure, innocent devotion to God would never accept this reality. He knows it would absolutely shatter her to learn that their sudden survival, the very milk for their baby, is entirely funded by a sin.
This creates a massive silent wall between the husband and the wife. They're sleeping in the same bed, they're eating the same food, but they're living in two completely different emotional universes.
While outwardly, the situation looks like a dream come true. A month later, Dinanath gets a promotion. His salary doubles from 50 to 100 rupees a month.
Wow.
On top of that, he is handed a massive 200 rupee bonus. Suddenly, all the trappings of prosperity are entering their home. The crushing weight of the mocking creditors is totally gone. They can finally breathe again.
But internally, Dinanath is enduring a quiet psychological torture. This is where Premchand's genius for social realism really shines through. While the family is finally fed, Dinanath himself is crushed by a heavy, invisible burden of guilt.
Because of his upbringing.
Right. His strict religious upbringing has conditioned him to view the universe as a grand moral ledger. He knows he literally cooked the books at work, so he assumes the divine is preparing to balance the spiritual books on his life.
He is basically waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Constantly. Every single time something good happens, the promotion, the sudden influx of bonus money, it does not bring him relief or joy. It actually increases his anxiety.
Because he feels the impending punishment will have to be even worse to match his unearned success.
He is suffering in complete silence, surrounded by the comforts his own sin purchased.
And the universe has a highly unsettling way of manifesting our deepest paranoias. Because the next major plot point introduces exactly what Dinanath has been dreading. He falls critically ill.
A terrible fever.
We are talking about a terrifying feverish brush with death. He is bedridden and almost dies. But against the odds, he survives and regains just enough strength to actually return to the office.
And this illness serves as the catalyst for the ultimate ideological collision in the story. It brings that silent wall between husband and wife crashing down.
During his recovery, Gauri happily reveals a secret to him. She tells Dinanath that during the absolute most critical day of his illness, when it looked like he was going to slip away, she made a desperate vow to God.
A bargain.
She promised that if Dinanath recovered, she would host a grand feast and feed 50 Brahmins. and she proudly points out that the very next day, his fever broke and he started getting better.
To her, this is undeniable mathematical proof that God listened to her vow and intervened once again to save them. It perfectly reinforces her transactional view of the universe. She offered a spiritual payment, and the divine provided a physical cure.
But for the viewer who might not be familiar, we need to unpack what feeding 50 Brahmins actually means in this cultural context.
Yeah, this isn't just throwing a nice dinner party for some friends. Hosting a feast for Brahmin priests is considered one of the highest acts of religious piety, gratitude, and purification. It is also incredibly expensive. Gauri isn't just celebrating, she is essentially trying to purchase and secure continued divine favor.
And the way she calculates the logistics of this feast is both humorous and incredibly stressful, especially if you are the one holding the purse strings.
The math of her piety.
We get a front row seat to it. She explains to a still weak Dinanath that inviting 50 Brahmins does not mean you are feeding 50 people.
No, of course not.
Because if you invite 50 esteemed priests, about 100 people will actually show up to partake in the blessing.
Right.
Then you are obligated to feed about 50 poor folks who will inevitably gather outside the house. Plus, you have to invite 20 to 25 of your own friends and relatives so they can witness the event.
So suddenly, her holy vow to feed 50 Brahmins has snowballed into a massive, highly expensive feast for 200 people.
200 people. And she casually asks Dinanath to head down to the market to buy the colossal amounts of supplies needed.
She needs large quantities of flour, vegetables, and ghee. Ghee being clarified butter, which is a very expensive and pure ingredient essential for religious feasts.
This scene brilliantly highlights the tragic disconnect between the two of them.
Let's look at the two realities occupying the same room here. Dinanath, burdened by the thief in his heart, firmly believes that his near-fatal illness was the very divine punishment he was dreading. He views the fever as God striking him down for the forgery.
While Gauri, entirely unaware of the moral compromise, sees God solely as their benevolent savior who answered her prayer.
The brutal irony Premchand has constructed here is incredible. Gauri wants to throw a holy, sacred, purifying feast to honor the divine. But what money is going to pay for the expensive ghee, the flour, and the vegetables?
It is the forgery money.
The irony is that the wealth funding this supposedly pure religious event is the exact same wealth earned through the desperate sin that Dinanath is currently agonizing over. Gauri is unwittingly trying to celebrate a miracle using the proceeds of a crime.
Which brings us to the absolute climax of the narrative.
Yeah.
The outburst.
Boiling point.
Up until this moment, Dinanath has been swallowing his guilt, keeping his dark secret, and playing the role of the provider. But when Gauri hands him the shopping list for this 200-person holy feast, he snaps.
He completely loses it.
Instead of being the grateful, recovering husband, he erupts.
It is the psychological breaking point of a man who can no longer reconcile his grim, dirty reality with his wife's pristine, untouched faith.
And the arguments he makes in this moment are incredibly raw. He looks at Gauri and tells her that he works tirelessly for her. He sacrifices everything for her well-being. But, he argues, if he were to beat her with a stick one day, she wouldn't even look at his face anymore.
She would despise him.
She would.
He is establishing a direct, unflinching comparison here between his own actions as a flawed human husband and the actions of the divine as a provider.
He flat out refuses to be grateful to a God who, in his eyes, operates the exact same way as an abusive spouse. A God who creates a life filled with terror, starvation, and the constant looming threat of punishment.
He sees the divine not as a savior who intervened, but as a tyrant who callously watched them starve for an entire year before lifting a single finger.
This argument leads directly to the profound breakdown of the title itself, Basi Bhat mein Khuda ka Sajha.
Meaning, there is no need for God's share in stale rice.
Let's unpack that metaphor, because it carries the entire thematic weight of Premchand's message.
The stale rice represents their meager, highly compromised survival. Dinanath did not receive a grand, pure, unearned miracle from the heavens. He had to sacrifice his own morality, break the law, and endure terrible silent anxiety just to get some metaphorical stale rice.
Just to keep his child breathing and his wife fed.
He had to get his hands dirty when the heavens remained completely silent.
And now, he bitterly resents that God, whom he feels ignored their suffering and only exists to punish him, is suddenly being given all the credit.
Why should a terrifying, absent divine figure get a share of their hard-earned, morally tainted money to throw a lavish party for 200 people.
Dinanath feels he earned that survival through his own sweat and his own sin, and the divine has absolutely no right to step in at the last minute and claim the glory for it.
It is a devastating critique of how we assign credit for our survival.
And Dinanath doesn't just stop at arguing theology, he delivers a final, chilling ultimatum to Gauri. He looks at his wife and says, "If you insist on this feast, I will eat poison."
It is a shocking escalation. It demonstrates just how far gone he really is. He is willing to end his own life rather than participate in this hypocritical celebration of a god he feels abandoned him.
The scene and the story itself ends right there, with Gauri staring at him, absolutely terrified, her entire worldview completely shattered by the stranger her husband has become.
Synthesizing what Premchand is doing here reveals a masterful critique. He is exploring how blind transactional faith operates when it collides with the brutal, grinding reality of extreme poverty.
Dinanath represents the ugly, compromised, hands-on reality of sheer survival.
He knows the actual terrible cost of keeping a family alive in an unforgiving world. Gauri, on the other hand, represents an innocent, almost detached devotion that completely ignores the systemic pressures forcing her husband into darkness.
Premchand isn't necessarily arguing that faith itself is bad, is he?
Not at all. Rather, he's demanding that the reader examine how poverty weaponizes morality, turning ethical behavior into a luxury that only the wealthy can afford. When you are starving, morality takes a backseat to survival, and Premchand forces us to look at the psychological wreckage that leaves behind.
It is a story that refuses to give you easy answers, and it stays with you long after you process that final scene. So what does this all mean for you watching this video right now? I want you to really reflect on this dynamic.
It's a very relatable feeling.
Have you ever been in a situation where the harsh reality of your own hard work, or perhaps the incredibly difficult compromising choices you had to make, were completely overshadowed by someone else stepping in and taking the credit?
Have you ever felt like you earned your stale rice the hard way, through sheer grit and sacrifice, only to have someone else demand a share of the glory?
That feeling of deep injustice transcends the specific circumstances of 1930s India. It asks us to constantly evaluate who we attribute our successes and failures to, and whether those attributions are actually fair to the people doing the heavy, often unseen lifting in our lives.
We have to acknowledge the reality of what survival costs.
I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to mull over as you go about your day. When sheer desperation forces a fundamentally good person to do a bad thing simply to survive, to buy milk for their crying child, does traditional morality still apply?
Or does extreme poverty create its own separate, brutal set of ethics?
Is Dinanath a criminal who deserves to be punished, or is he simply a victim of a broken system that left him no other choice but to forge that ledger? Let us know what you think down in the comments.
We really want to hear your perspectives on this one.
We are incredibly glad you joined us for this deep dive into the human condition. If you found value in this analysis and want to keep exploring the profound depths of classic literature, please hit that subscribe button for the Simplified Summary YouTube channel.
Drop a like on the video.
And share your perspective in the comment section. We genuinely read all of them to see what you want us to tackle next. Thank you for your time, and we will see you on the next deep dive.